Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Women's Philanthropy Board Roundtable program, Everything You Need to Know About FAFSA. I'm Mary Elizabeth Fukai, and I serve as Assistant Director of the Women's Philanthropy Board. And for any of you who may not be familiar with our programs or are new to our programs, WPB is an educational outreach program within the Carey Center for the Advancement of Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies, which is in the College of Human Sciences at Auburn University. And we provide educational programs to the public on a wide variety of topics, as well as mentoring initiatives within the university. For today's program, we are excited to have with us two experts on the free application for financial student aid, or FAFSA. Portia Johnson and Emily Hines lead the Alabama FAST, the Alabama Application Survival Toolkit, which is a statewide initiative that provides information and resources to high school students, parents, school counselors, and administrators across the state to help them make informed decisions about the FAFSA process. As you may be aware, the Alabama State Board of Education enacted the FAFSA mandate this past fall, and it requires all graduating high school seniors to either complete a FAFSA application or a non-participation waiver. So today we're looking forward to learning more about this survival toolkit that can help y'all with those steps. So Portia and Emily, thank you so much for being here today, and I'll turn it over to y'all.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. Wonderful. Can everyone see my screen here? Perfect. So first, I'm going to start by introducing who we are a little bit more and what we do in Extension through Auburn University. And then we'll talk a little bit about FAFSA itself, what it is and why it's important. And then we'll talk a bit about this option in Alabama, which is to either complete FAFSA or to opt out of it, and how important it is for families to be informed so that they can make the right decision for their family, for their student, for their financial situation. And lastly, as you mentioned, we are going to talk more about our initiative, which is called Alabama FAST. So I'm Dr. Portia Johnson. I have a shared appointment at Auburn University in Consumer and Design Sciences, in the College of Human Sciences, and also in Alabama Cooperative Extension as the Financial Resource Management and Workforce Development Specialist. I'll let Emily introduce herself.
Okay, yes, my name is Emily Hines, and I am a regional agent with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System through Auburn University. My home office is in Walker County. I actually cover the central region in Alabama, and I am currently serving as the priority team coordinator for our team.
And if some of you here are wondering what we mean when we say Alabama Cooperative Extension, Auburn University is the land grant university, a land grant university for the state of Alabama, which means our university has a charge and takes up a charge to help support families throughout the state by disseminating the knowledge and the resources that the university provides to better families across the state. So we are in Cooperative Extension, a marriage of two universities, Auburn and A&M, and we are also have a presence in all 67 counties. There is a county coordinator in every county, and our team, of which Emily is the coordinator, the leader, we focus on financial research management and workforce development. So that's a bit of who we are. So I want to talk a little bit more about why we're here today. Our purpose and the goals for this session are fairly simple. We want to raise awareness about what FAFSA is. We want to raise that awareness across the state because we do have this new state mandate, as Mary Elizabeth just shared. And this mandate is going to impact everyone who will eventually have a high school senior in the state of Alabama, because the mandate is requiring every high school senior to make a choice about FAFSA, either to complete that FAFSA or to make the decision of going through the opt-out process. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. And so we want to raise that awareness because we want to empower families to make that right choice. We know that there are a lot of misconceptions about FAFSA, and there's a lot of truths that people think they know, but they aren't actually factual. So we want to help people understand the facts so that they can make the right choice. And lastly, we know that this mandate puts a large burden on high school counselors and administrators, because instead of parents and students who know that they're going to four-year universities or who know that they want to complete FAFSA to do so, now there is a requirement for every high school senior at every high school to make a decision. And so that's going to create a lot more need from the counselors, and we want to help them fill in the gap by giving their families resources that lessens the administrative work on them. So that is the goal of our program, and that is the goal of what we seek to do. I want to ask you all, because what I've learned in my research so far is that FAFSA is not really a fun word for most families if they know what FAFSA is at all, or if they've engaged in it. So if you could humor me a bit and use the buttons in the Zoom, and let's do a feeling meter. Let me know how you're feeling about FAFSA in general. I see some of the reactions coming in already. I'm getting a lot of nervous, confused, yet that is a general opinion and feeling that I hear from a lot of parents that we see. Yep. Okay, somebody's calm, at ease. That's good. You know a lot about FAFSA. You've probably been through this process a few times. Good. Yeah, more of those nervous, confused, calm. Good, calm. I like it. All right. No one's upset or disinterested. And I put that as the last laughy face because sometimes we just gotta laugh to keep from crying, right? So no one's feeling that way right now. So that's good to know. Okay. So we're gonna jump right in, and Emily is gonna tell you a bit more about what FAFSA is.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. So FAFSA is just the free application for federal student aid application. And so this is something that my family, we have been through this several times. I have a blended family with 6 kids. And so our youngest is actually a junior in high school right now. And so we've been through this process many times. This mandate was enacted last year to take effect for this academic year. And so in 2022, this will be the first graduating class where this is a requirement that they have to complete this application or either opt out. So we have a junior right now. So next year we'll have to make that decision if he wants to fill out this application, pursue college, or just opt out and enter straight into the workforce. But this is something that the application actually becomes available October 1st each year. And so it's really important that you try to push to go ahead and have those seniors, those graduating seniors, apply as soon as they can, because it is given on a first come, first served basis. But this aid includes federally funded student loans, scholarships, Pell Grants, and work study. You will notice at the top that it tells us that $3.75 billion in Pell Grants went unused in 2021. And so this is due to those students just not completing the application. So hopefully this mandate will help award that money to those students who otherwise may not have had the opportunity or realized that they had the opportunity. So who is eligible for FAFSA? So a lot of times students and parents may believe that, well, we're not going to fill it out because we're not eligible. So there are several reasons why you may want to consider filling it out. First of all, it's going to allow you to have that funding to go into college. But what some parents and students don't realize is that there are some scholarships that are out there that require you to complete the FAFSA form. And so it's going to be important that you go through that process in order to be eligible for those particular scholarships as well. but also students that are eligible, those U.S. citizens, also eligible non-citizens. You will need to have a social security number or that alien ID number, and that's just a number that's assigned to those immigrant citizens. Also, you enrolled or accepted at least half-time in eligible degree or certificate program. So that will have to be a goal. And as you go through the FAFSA application, you will have to mark that. You'll have to answer these questions that will serve to help them determine your eligibility. You will need to maintain satisfactory academic progress throughout your school years and have a high school diploma, a GED certificate, state-approved homeschooling or career pathway program. And then you'll notice that $120 billion is awarded to college students each year. So one thing that is important to understand is that before you actually go into the application, you will need to create an FSA ID, which is a financial student aid ID. So if a dependent student is going to apply for this FAFSA, they are going to need their parent to create a financial student aid ID as well. That is one of the steps. So if you're going to sit down to submit this application, you need to have this ID before you get started. But it's just a unique username and password that's combination used to log into the U.S. Department of Education websites. So it helps you to provide that legal signature electronically. And it is kept confidentially. So what is cost of attendance? So this is something that is used to determine the amount that you're awarded in FAFSA funds. And so cost of attendance is calculated by colleges and universities, and it's the amount that it will cost a student to go to school. So it's just an estimate. So what they take into consideration is going to be things such as your tuition and fees. But it's important to realize that it's not just tuition and fees, but they also calculate into that your room and board, your books, supplies, transportation, and other fees and other associated costs that may, be something that would be factored into your cost to attend college. And then also, we're going to look at expected family contribution. So what this is, it's just an index used to determine aid eligibility. So it's a federally established calculation. So again, this is going to be a number that's calculated using your family's tax and untaxed incomes, assets, and benefits. And so with a dependent child, it's going to look at, you're going to be connected, and they're going to look at your family's tax information. And so that's going to play a part into how that number is calculated. So again, in order for them to determine the amount that is awarded to you or available to you, they're going to take the cost of attendance and subtract the EFC from that. And so that's just important to understand how that number is calculated.
Okay, so now that we understand what FAFSA is in general, and there are some questions in the chat box, so I'm going to stop a second and answer a few of these questions. So Chelsea asked, is there a way to get info on what the required info will be for FAFSA before October 1st, so we can prep all the necessary information and materials? Really great question. And a bit later, we talk some about the importance of ahead and preparing ahead for the FAFSA on the studentaid.gov website. There is a checklist of all the items that you should prepare in advance so that you have all the documents ready. And our materials kind of line those things out in a very simple, easy to follow checklist form that you can literally check off depending on your student status, because the checklist will be different for students that are dependents, students that are independent or emancipated, and then students who are eligible non-citizens. But in general, those simple things include prior year tax information, assets, income information, and any large expenses that you had in that past year. But again, we'll talk a little bit about those things, how you can get access to those things in detail. We won't talk about them in detail here because we don't have a whole lot of time, but we'll talk about where you can get those resources. Another question that I'll answer is, what if you don't plan on going to get that education until a year after you graduate? That's really good. So it's linked to Chelsea's question, and I would say the wise thing to do is to plan ahead, to go ahead and get those documents ready so that you are ready when that next year's funding cycle opens up, so that you are eligible for those funds when they're available come October 1, because as Emily said, they will be available on a first come, first served basis every year. And then there's another question: how can a high school senior apply October 1 if the eligibility requires completion of high school and enrollment in a college? Okay, I thought colleges use the FAFSA to figure out their aid packages. That's correct. So you can apply in advance for aid as you're preparing to go to school that next year. So when you are applying to college, to a college application, the suggestion from the financial aid office is often to go ahead and begin that FAFSA process as well. So you don't have to have already graduated to start the process of applying. And once you get closer to the academic year that they'll actually start, as they prepare your award letter, you'll get more finalized information about what the true award offer is. So I hope that answers those questions. So to FAFSA or opt out. To make an informed decision about FAFSA, first we have to really talk about some things that a lot of people commonly believe. And we know this from the research, because we ask very often when we think about that large number, those billions of dollars that go unused every year, and why that is. A lot of researchers ask this very question: why is it that people aren't completing the FAFSA? And what we find is that a lot of people believe some things that are not entirely true. So, and they kind of fall into some really broad buckets. And these are the four biggest things. So a lot of people believe that FAFSA is only for low-income households. Literally just a moment ago, I was talking to a colleague as I was headed here to do this talk, and she said, well, I don't do FAFSA because I know my children won't qualify for anything. And that is not entirely true. As Emily just mentioned, your expected family income and the cost of attendance really decides what you qualify for FAFSA. So your income alone does not exclude you from receiving FAFSA. There's a lot of other factors that might go into what your child is actually able to qualify. And what we find, especially if the cost of attendance at a university is high, or that there are other financial things in the family, that there are a good amount of families who have high earning incomes and their child still apply for some need-based scholarship. But even beyond that, there are scholarships that are not need-based, and there are funding that are not need-based, that might be merit-based, that your child may not be able to qualify for simply because they didn't fill out the FAFSA. So there are some fundings that are not tied to a financial need that are only available to people who complete FAFSA. So even if you never got a need-based scholarship from FAFSA completion, you could be ruling yourself out of getting other funding that you could have gotten had you simply filled out the form. Another common myth is that FAFSA is only for grants and scholarships. That is also not true. FAFSA is used to determine work study. And so oftentimes children want to work on campus while they're in school, but if they had not completed FAFSA, they will not get priority on those work study opportunities. And even if they do get some work opportunities, those students who have FAFSA may be prioritized and able to get the more coveted positions because they completed the FAFSA. And then lastly, federal loans are available through FAFSA. And if you are taking out loans for school, for your child's education or for education, these loans and oftentimes are a much better option than private loans from banking institutions because they are low interest and you quite easily qualify for them. Another common myth is that FAFSA is only for need-based scholarships, and I just spoke to that one when I talked about the low-income family myth. There are merit-based scholarships, as I said, that are only granted through FAFSA completion. And then lastly, and this is a very big one, so many people believe that they should not complete the FAFSA if they aren't going to a four-year institution. And that's also not true. Two-year institution, certificate programs, training programs, workforce development programs, they qualify for grants, which mean you don't pay those monies back very often, which is free money to go to school. A lot of those programs and colleges have FAFSA monies available. So that's important to also note. It's not just for a four-year degree. Even when we dispel the myths, even when people are aware of the facts about FAFSA, there can still be some really looming concerns for parents. And so I want to address 4 of those concerns that parents typically have. The elephant in the room, and the biggest one for a lot of our families, is their concern about disclosing so much private information. I know we saw the question earlier about what do we need? What's that checklist? And the first thing I mentioned was your W-2s, right? Or your IRS information, your tax information. And so a lot of people, we are uncomfortable talking about finances. So it leads naturally to we are uncomfortable sharing that and we aren't sure where it's going. But I want to assure you that the information collected on the FAFSA by the U.S. Department of Education, it is protected by law. It is federally protected. And although your school will know that your child did complete the FAFSA, it's simply a yes or no categorization. They will not know your private information that you shared on the FAFSA. They won't know details about your assets, details about your tax information, details about your accounts. The only entity that saw that information is the U.S. Department of Education. And there are strict laws to protect its confidentiality and its secrecy. So I hope that dispels some of that concern. And then the next concern is that it's going to be so time consuming. I think that has a lot to do with our emotions earlier about how we're anxious or confused or concerned. We think it's going to take a lot of time. And frankly, if we aren't prepared ahead of time, it can take a bit of time. But if you've prepared ahead and you've kind of checked off that checklist of things and you have all those things ready, when you actually sit down to complete the FAFSA, you can get it done in as little as 30 minutes, even sometimes less. I've seen people do it in far less time than that because they were prepared. They got that FSA ID ahead of time. They had it on hand. They remembered it or they wrote it someplace where they could find it easily. And they had all that documentation kind of ready to go as well. The next concern is people feel that they don't know where to get that information on that checklist, or they don't know where to get information about how to just go about the process. And so our hope today is that our workshop and the materials that we're presenting will help ease your concern about the process itself of applying to FAFSA. Our booklet provides literally a step-by-step guide of completing FAFSA. And even where that's not enough, the state of Alabama has a lot of wonderful, free, trustworthy places and people you can reach out to get the information. There's literally a help desk line that you can call, that you can text, that you can send them a tweet or another social media message, and they will help you right then and there if you're having a concern in that very moment. So rest assured, the resources are here for you to get through that FAFSA completion in a fairly painless way. And then lastly, the concern is that people just don't want to take on more debt. And that's a fair concern. But what we want people to understand is that completing the FAFSA is not a commitment to take on debt. It's not a commitment to a loan. It's just the first step in finding out what type of aid or resources or help might be out there to actually lower your cost of attending a college or a program, and to lessen the debt burden on you over time. So it actually does the reverse. It makes things, completing the FAFSA can make the financial burden far less for you in the end. I want to talk a little bit about something that a parent said to me 2 weeks ago, and it didn't come to me at the time, but when she said it, I said, oh my goodness, we have to add this in the materials, because I see this all the time being a concern for families who have planned ahead for college, families who already have 529 plans, families who already have state-sponsored coverage plans. And so if you've been saving for school, you may think, well, I don't need that money. I don't need to apply for FAFSA, or I'll leave that money for someone else. So maybe you're being altruistic in that way to say, well, we won't need it. We'll let someone else apply for it. And so I want to not really challenge that thinking, but encourage you to think a little bit differently about it, because the rules around the 529 and Coverdell plan can allow you to think about more creative ways to spend your money. If your child, for example, gets a scholarship, and so all that money you have been saving since they were 2 years old, that you don't need to spend as much of it on tuition or board anymore, the plans really allow for you to pivot and use the money that you've saved in different ways, and accept the scholarship monies that your child received. So for example, if your child were to get a scholarship, the exact dollar amount of the scholarship that they received, you can withdraw that amount from the 529 plan without any penalty at all. So that's money that you just gave back to yourself. Those 529s, they never expire. So even if you don't use that money on, say, your first child, because they got a full ride scholarship, you can use that money on another child by transferring the beneficiary to perhaps your middle child or your second child, or even to a grandchild down the line. So you can save that money or multiply it essentially, so that you can fund more education for more of your children. And you can also roll those monies over into another plan had they not been used because your child got a scholarship, for example. And again, many merit-based, not just need-based scholarships can be available through FAFSA completion. So to complete the FAFSA, there are 4 ways. The first one, the one that we believe is done most often, is to simply do it online at FAFSA.com to make sure you've created that FAFSA ID in advance, or to do it on the mobile app. I know a lot of students in my conversation, they're doing FAFSA for their parent and for themselves. They're doing both parts of the process, and students are quite often doing it on their phones. So this makes it easier for them to do it that way. And you can also either print the form from the FAFSA website, or you can call a number and have them send one to you and fill it out that way and mail it back. If you are not completing the FAFSA form, if you are making the decision to opt out, that process is called a non-participation waiver. And on the screen is what that waiver in the state of Alabama looks like. And as you can see, it requires some information about the student, the signature of the school counselor, the school principal, and ultimately the school superintendent. Once this entire waiver is completed, it's called what we call certified. and it becomes a permanent record in the student's account. So now that we've talked about what the state requires and what FAFSA is, we want to talk some about our initiative to help parents, one, make this decision about whether to complete FAFSA or opt out, and then two, about how to actually go through the steps of each of them. So our initiative essentially houses on our website materials for parents, high school students, and guardians. And what it includes is a booklet. It's a 16-page booklet for parents and caregivers. It includes a decision tree to help you literally walk through the choice by answering some simple yes and no questions. And by the time you get to the bottom of all those questions, you will have a better idea about which of those choices is the best for you and your family. The booklet also has a detailed list of resources locally in your area, in the state and nationally, to help you complete FAFSA should you get stumped, to help you get through that process, like I said, for free. There are 4 fact sheets in our toolkit that gives you specific information about steps that people tend to get stuck on. So whether it be understanding the FAFSA ID, the steps of actually filling out the FAFSA form itself, or understanding the different types of aid, those fact sheets are there. And then for counselors and educators, we have a series of bookmarks and posters that they can share with their students, and hopefully those students take home to their parents. I just spoke a little bit to the parent guide itself, how it is a 16-page booklet that we are making available for free to parents that will help them understand this FAFSA process a bit more. I talked about the decision tree that's in it and some of the other information. And then I spoke a little bit to which fact sheets are also included. And Emily will talk a bit about the links on the website.
Okay, so there will be some links that will be provided to the Financial Aid in Alabama Board of Education sites. There will be online FAFSA application, the Alabama non-participation opt-out waiver, also the FSA ID and the IRS data retrieval tool. Also, there are posters, and I think Dr. Johnson referred to those a little bit ago, that will be on the FAFSA decision tree, Mythbusters, financial aid timeline, and types of financial aid that will also be available. Those will be resources that will be on our website as well.
So there is a question in the comments about how do you get the booklet? And so this, this page talks about how you get the resources and the booklet. Our team, as I mentioned before, the Financial Resource Management and Workforce Development team will be providing these, the booklet, the fact sheets to parents in the areas that they serve, beginning this fall to support the academic school year, August 2022 through June 2023. So the booklets will be available during that time period, and all of our agents will have them in their offices. We are also looking at a potential partnership, which we're really excited about, to deliver these workshops locally, a few of them locally across the state. And so what we'd hope that you do and what we ask is that you join our wait list so that we can have your information and we can get a booklet to you when they are ready to roll. If you're a parent, if you are a counselor or an educator, and you are interested in supporting the families that you serve with these materials, we ask you to also join the wait list. When you click on the tiny URL, it will ask you to designate which of the two that you are. And we are also happy to get those resources out to you so that you can support the families that I'm sure are asking you a lot of questions about the process as well. There is another question. The website, yes. So the website also goes live August 1st, and the website is going to be aces.edu/FAFSA, FAFSA. That link is not yet live. It will be live once the program kicks off at the start of this academic year. And those on the wait list, we will send you information about when the program is live and the materials are for distribution. Can you share a link to your website? Nothing for this year's grants. So this is not ready this year. It's in the process of being ready, but there are resources. If you have a graduate this year who is completing FAFSA, the Alabama Possible, I'm going to put this in the message here. They have some existing resources for students graduating this year. They are partnered with high school counselors and also with the Department of Education, really supporting this FAFSA mandate and providing workshops. They call these workshops FAFSA Family Fridays, where they are helping parents to complete FAFSA and answer any questions about FAFSA as well. So if you have a child that's graduating this year, Stephanie, I would suggest looking at alabamapossible.org, I believe it is. Any other questions? You're welcome. So I am going to stop sharing. I believe I did. Okay.
Will you say that website again that's not going to be live until August, but it was
aces.edu / and I'll put it here too.
Okay.
aces.edu / FAFSA.
Thank you.
And we will reach out to those who provide your information to us via the link on the tiny URL. And I'll give the floor back over to you, Mary Elizabeth.
All right. If y'all think of a question as we're finishing up here, feel free to yell it out or just type it in the comments, and I promise we'll get to you. And if you come up with something later that you would like to ask, you can email me and I'll get the message to Dr. Johnson. And if you would like to share this information that we have provided today, you can view this and share it through our YouTube page, which is aub.ie/WPB YouTube. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in Women's Philanthropy Board, and it will pull up our page. So you can view this program there, as well as a lot of our older programming and any future programming that we post. If you would like to find out about the Women's Philanthropy Board programming that is upcoming, you can again email me or Kim Walker or Sid James. Or you can follow us on Facebook and keep up with our programs there. And Dr. Johnson and Emily, This has been awesome information. I know it's been super helpful to everybody. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and thanks so much for putting this workbook together in the first place, because I think it's going to be a very useful tool throughout the state. So we appreciate the work that you're all doing. Any final questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. Y'all take care. So out of my personal curiosity, how long have y'all been working on this toolkit? And was it like after the mandate was enacted, or were you working on it ahead of time?
So we started working on the toolkit in December. So it was certainly after it was